Welcome to the Airgun Extra Podcast, brought to you in association with CrackShot, the Southwest's premier airgun centre and ranges. There is a link to their website in the podcast description. I'm Matt Manning. With me for this podcast, I've got my mate and partner in crime, Rich Saunders, and we are joined by Eric Irish from CrackShot. We have got, as ever, a lot to get through this week. Rich and I have got some interesting kit to look at. We've got the usual Q&A section brought to you in association with Anglia Tackle and Gun. Rich has literally just spent a couple of days out shooting with our competition winner, so I'm itching to hear all about that. But most importantly, we've got Eric here for the first part of the podcast. So how are you doing, Eric?
Yeah, really good, thanks. Yes, good to be back.
Good. Well, it's good to have you back. It's good to have you back. Well, look, we often mention the fact that CrackShot is based in Newton Abbot in Devon, which is a real tourist destination. Summertime is pretty much upon us now. Does that make a significant difference to the amount and kind of trade that you get in the shop?
Yeah, it does. I mean, we've got our regulars that come in, well, regular all the time, but we also get people who actually they'll book a holiday so they can come and see us, much to their wife's disgust. But they will say, yeah, I booked to come here, and because, yeah, I wanted to come and see you. We have some people visit the area every year as a family holiday. They come in, mostly on the range. But, yeah, we have some good sales to people from all over.
So it's definitely a busier time of year for you now then?
Yes, yeah. Almost definitely, yeah.
And I should think also, you've got the indoor ranges. What a brilliant thing to be able to do, because it does sometimes rain in Devon. I've witnessed it myself, and the default can sometimes be something like, I don't know, 10-pin bowling or something along those lines. But great for families to be able to come and do some shooting undercover as well.
Oh, it is. I mean, we got 3 separate shooting ranges, and like I said, it poured with rain today, and we had several walking groups today, and just looking for something to do. But once they get there and and if they're down for like a week or so, very often they'll come back again. And we have had 4 generations of one family in at one point, from 90-year-old down to about 13, and to find an activity where they can all take part, all enjoy it, and all be competitive is very difficult.
Do people have to bring their own rifle, Eric, or do you have hire rifles or anything like that?
They can bring their own. Some people, when on holiday, they sneak their air gun in the back of their car, but we supply everything. It's all, if they want to come in and shoot, we do packages, so they can do all 3 ranges in the hour-and-a-half package. So they can do half hour on the rifles, half hour on the pistols, and then come down onto the shooting simulator.
Oh, of course, yeah, you've got that. And what sort of money are people looking at for that hour and a half, Eric?
The hour and a half is $39 per person.
Wow.
We
Great.
supply all the guns, unlimited ammo, targets, air, and as much help as they need as well.
Do you get many newcomers, Eric? Because obviously you've mentioned the hardened shooters that choose to stay nearby so they can visit. But do you get newcomers to the sport that have literally just heard about you because they're in the locality and they're looking for something to do?
Yeah, we do. We still have 1 or 2 locals who come in and say, "Oh, didn't know you were here." We've been there 10 years, and but if they don't know, they don't know. But you're always surprised by where they come from.
Yeah, I was just thinking, with holiday makers in the area, it is potentially a great opportunity to introduce new people of all ages to airgun shooting.
Oh yeah, it's accessible to just about anyone.
On the subject of newcomers, Eric, we're spoilt for choice, I think, with affordable entry-level kit at the moment. But there's anything in particular that you are steering newcomers towards at the moment that's a particularly appropriate setup for them?
I mean, it little depends what they actually looking to do with it. We get people just got a couple of rats they want to sort out in the back garden, and if depending on whether they want to go to the expense of charging equipment or they just want a Springer, it just varies so much. You think, oh, you got the perfect setup there, and then they'll look around. There's like 150 different air guns to look at, and then oh, I like that one over there, and they change their mind completely. But if when we have some will come in, if they're local, they might buy a pre-charged, but they might come back and just charge it up with us. It's they'll just bring it back, we charge it up. There's no cost involved on that, and then we're open 7 days a week. Even the people that didn't buy a gun from us, they can still charge the gun, and we just ask for a donation in a charity box then.
Great.
And Eric, where do you stand with maybe mums or dads who come in and say, little Johnny wants to get into the sport, or little Janie wants to get into the sport? Do you stand towards a Springer, or obviously cost is a factor, but do you believe that every kid should learn to shoot on a Springer first and then move into PCP, or do you think PCP straight off?
May learn on a Springer, but like I said, once they've used our equipment, and then they go and try and use a Springer, unless they go for like the junior powered, some of them just can't cock. They cannot cock the gun, so that's a bit of an issue. So it is each to their own. Some parents would insist, they've been shooting for years, they're going to learn on a Springer, and then they go on from there. And then 6 months later, they're back in. They bought a junior Springer. Their shooting's improved. They're still into it. They're still keen, and then they trade it in and go for a sort of an entry level pre-charged or something pre-owned.
Rich and I were talking actually in the last podcast. We had a question about somebody that was asking about how much money or how little money can you get away with spending to start out with a suitable setup for hunting, for airgun hunting. And we touched on second-hand kit. Do you stock much in the way of second-hand airguns?
Yeah, we've got a whole wall of pre-owned kit. It's usually a bargain to be had somewhere. You can save probably about 30% off of new price, depending on the condition of it. And then we'll obviously we checked it all over, and we'll help someone setting it up, sort out their eye relief, help to zero it on the range, sort out the pellets they need, and they're good to go.
And Eric, do you find that most people who come into you to get rid of a gun, are they trading up, or are they people who are moving away from the sport? The reason I ask is that of all the people that I know through my club and friends and that, no one ever gives up a gun. They just get another one. So I'm just curious, your second-hand guns, are they trade-ins, people who don't like them, or people who are just giving up the sport?
It's a bit of everything. We get a lot of trade-ins. Very often they'll be trading 2 or 3 guns for one really nice one. I did have a collection of guns from one of an old customer who unfortunately had to give up shooting. He went into a home. I went down to his house, picked up 35 guns, 5 gun cabinets, about a dozen longbows, and a bunch of swords and daggers as well.
Wow.
Quite a collection. Quite a collection. Are you noticing, going back to new kit, towards the higher end, any trends at the moment? Any gun that everybody's talking about or leaning towards that really stands out?
I mean, obviously, Daystate did their big launch back at the shooting show. That's been very successful. We've sold a lot. We've still got a lot on back order. We're waiting for more to come in, and but that's generated sort of business with trade-ins as well. So yes, you may have 2 or 3 guns traded in for a new Daystate, and then you've got more pre-owned, and then they all get. We try as hard as we can to get them advertised weekly, but sometimes they're on the counter and I've seen the odd gun gone within the hour of it being traded in before.
Right. Yeah, I must admit, I've seen a few used air guns being posted on your. I've seen it on Facebook this week.
Yeah. We've started a new Facebook page again. Hopefully
Yeah,
it
so
won't get
presumably
taken down.
presumably that's a good place for people to look to keep up with what you've got in terms of second-hand stock.
We post a link on there, so you can follow the link, and it will take you usually to our website, and we've uploaded everything, with descriptions and pictures, and then we'll have them on Gunstar as well.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
I'm going to have to go and look at that now, Eric. I'm a sucker for a user. I can just see my wallet just emptying right now. So brace yourself. Incoming.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we can check your credit card limit out.
Don't.
Rich is on a mission to own all of the guns he used to have back in the day.
Okay.
And plus all of the guns he didn't have back in the day. So it's quite an ambitious acquisition project, but quite good for people like you that have got used air guns for sale.
It is. Well, send me a list of what you're looking for.
I'll ask my wife first.
Yes.
Well, Eric, it's been an absolute pleasure as ever catching up with you. We will do it again before too long.
Okay.
We'll let you go now, and Rich and I will move on and cover everything else we've got to get through in this podcast. But as ever, really good to catch up with you.
Yes, and you too as well.
Care, Rick.
So, Rich, the 2-day shooting experience with our comp winner, Chris Williams.
Yeah.
So, just to recap, we gave viewers, readers on the website, viewers that watch the main show on YouTube the opportunity to enter this competition to win a 2-day shooting experience with you, accommodation in between those 2 days, a meal out and a few drinks. How did it go? What happened and how did it go?
We had we had the best time. So Chris was the guy that we chose, and we had, I don't know how many entries, but more than I was expecting, to be fair. And as you know, we went for someone who wanted to do some more field shooting, but just hadn't had the opportunity. And we had quite a few people who already shot in the field, already had their own permissions and what have you. So we thought we'd try and go for someone who just hadn't experienced that side of the sport before, but was desperate to do so. So Chris came down, and we met up mid-morning, and we went off down to my local range, Reading Air Target Shooting Club. Having spent a couple of hours drinking tea and going through all the guns behind me, so we took an armful of guns each down to Reading Air Target Shooting Club. Chris has his own BRK Ghost carbine, as it turned out, and he's got a couple of other guns too, some really good guns. And what else? He's got a Zabria or Tizia, which I know is one of your favourites.
Yeah.
And he's got an HW97 as well, I think. So we went down there. We shot a load of different rifles. Had a shoot with some FAC rifles, up to about 95 foot-pounds. My 30 cal impact. We shot that at 55, 60 meters, and gave Chris an opportunity to pick a gun that he wanted to use, and also to get used to the night vision optic that would go on it, because we're going to be shooting at night. So in the end, it boiled down to Chris chose my BRK Ghost carbine in 2.2, simply because it had a DNT optics thermite on it, so he could use that at the night in the night. He ended up using that in the morning for our squirrel session, and then so first thing was we went off down to the woods 6 o'clock in the morning to shoot some squirrels. By about midday, when we hadn't seen a squirrel, I will admit to getting a little bit twitchy that this poor guy had travelled all this way to basically sit next to me in the woods. Fortunately, so we stopped and we had a bit of lunch. Fortunately, as we went back after lunch, got back in the hide, the squirrels turned up, and Chris shot 4 squirrels with 4 shots, clean as a whistle, no trouble at all. Then we packed that up around about 4 o'clock, went back to my place, had a cup of tea, and we then went out for a curry, which was very nice, down to the local curry house in my village. Had a good few hours chatting away about all kinds of gun stuff in the village over a few beers and a curry. Then the next morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, We did the squirrel thing. Then we finished at around about 5 o'clock in the evening. We went round to my fruit farm permission, which has got a real problem with corvids and wood pigeon in particular at the moment on the blueberry crop. So Chris shot 9 wood pigeon, a crow and a jackdaw and a rabbit.
Hang on, 9 wood pigeon.
9 wood pigeons, yeah.
That's a great session. I can remember you pinging me a few updates on WhatsApp when you were out squirrel shooting, because I was enjoying the great privilege of being sat at the desk grinding through the desk work while getting your updates from the field. But that's the first I've heard of him getting 9 pigeons.
Yeah. So he used my my FX DRS for that with the Alpex light on it. Alpex light on it. So again, time on the range the day before meant that he could get used to the rangefinder on that. And knocked down 9 pigeons and a couple of corvids, no trouble at all. Then, as I say, got this bonus rabbit in daylight as well. Then we went round to, so that went on till about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Then we went round to my chicken farm permission. Chris had a little look around there in daylight, and then when it got dark, around about sort of 9:30, 9:45, he started to shoot some rats. So back to the BRK Ghost, and he shot a dozen rats or so. So all in all, it was about just over 17 hours of shooting on 3 different venues, 3 different permissions, with squirrels, rabbits, rats, pigeons, crow, jackdaw, so 6 different species. And the really important thing was that every single one of those is a proper nuisance to the farmers on whose land we were shooting on. So, Chris had a great couple of days. I had a great couple of days with him. He's a really nice guy to spend company with. And the landowners were really grateful that we put a dent in the pest population.
Yeah, to genuine purpose to what you were out doing. I mean, it sounds like he should make some videos for us, because he shoots more than we do.
He does. Well, I got some photographs together, so I will write up a story.
Okay, well, we'll see if we can overlay a few over the podcast as well.
Yes.
People are watching the podcast. Maybe if we've had the technical nous, they might have just seen 1 or 2 photos.
Yeah,
if not, we'll try again next time. No, brilliant. I'm so glad to hear that it went well and that you both enjoyed it. So, brilliant. Like I said, I was quite jealous hearing about that from my desk. On that note, let's move on to the bit where we have our product chat.
Yeah.
And I'm going to need to refer to my notes, because there's some pretty sophisticated stuff. So, EagleVisionCam, the website EagleVisionCam.com, they make some really innovative accessories, and the one that most people, and certainly us, will be most familiar with is their GoPro camera mount, because we use it so much for the majority of our scope cam filming. So yes, EagleVisionCam.com. Don't go off looking at the moment though, because we want to have a look at this kit first. So this time we've got scope mounts. I think the range is called Infinity Elevation.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. But this is an amazing mount. Okay, so it's Picatinny with really nice locking system to a 30mm tube. But the key thing with this is that you've got forward and backward adjustment, and also, as the Infinity Elevation name suggests, is the fact that you have got this, and obviously this all locks out, but you've got this elevation adjustment for the angle of elevation, which basically means you're never going to need shims. And with the amount of long range work that people are doing these days, super heavy slugs that, although they're pinpoint accurate at long range, they're still dropping, and people are often running out of adjustment on their optics. And quite often, when you've got nowadays MOA built into scope rails, which you don't want to use, you almost need to dial it back out with shims on your mounts. But with this, you could effectively have your scope's elevation dial on its mid sort of 0 setting and basically set elevation using the angle adjustment on these mounts, and then work up and down from there should you ever need to. But amazing quality, surprisingly light as well for such a robust piece of kit. And one thing I will quickly hold up is, again, the neat little Eagle Vision box that you get with all of this stuff. It's beautifully packaged inside and out. There were also, I believe it's in the same range, so there's a two-piece setup. Obviously, you don't get the forward and backward adjustment with the two-piece mounts, but you've still got the elevation adjustment, which is the key thing. These have also got a Picatinny attachment on the top ring, but there are loads and loads of accessories. I think the big one-piece mount does actually come with like a bubble level, but you can get like a bubble level add-on which swings out. I think that's what you've got in your hand now. There are additional Picatinny attachments. There are adapters, so you can lift basically the Picatinny mount off of your Picatinny rail and pop it onto a dovetail rail on a different gun. It's a system, really. I think is probably the best way to put it. And the nice thing is, with all of this kit, you get the tool, with the accessories as well, you get the tools that you need to fit them. And one thing I want to point out really quickly is also with this bigger mount that's got the forward and backward adjustment as well as the elevation, because of the orientation of the rings, which don't tighten down on either side, they're kind of swung across at an angle. That means you've got a flat plate. You can see what I mean. They're not asymmetric, but they're off center. Not off center, but they don't fasten straight down. They come in at a quartering angle. That means you've got a flat plate on this side. So those accessories like bubble level, Picatinny rail, whatever you're going to be attaching, goes on there dead flat. So it's a really, really clever setup. And like I say, the build quality, again, which is pretty typical of EagleVisionCam, is just amazing. Heck of a scope mounting solution.
It never ceases to amaze me just not only how well made Masood's stuff is, but how there's just, he thinks of absolutely every single scenario that you're likely to come up against and has a thing to fix it. So you never find yourself thinking, they're good, but what I really need is that, because he's thought of it. And I mean, as you said a couple of times about the build quality is just unbelievable. If this was on a space shuttle, you wouldn't be surprised. It's just amazing. And I'll tell you one thing, I've not yet had the opportunity to put them on a rifle, but I will be very soon. But I tell you what I am looking forward to doing is, as you said, a lot of rifles now have MOA built into the rail. And it's not usually an issue on a rifle because you obviously get that much lower to the barrel anyway. But I shoot an awful lot with night vision products on bullpups, and on a rifle like the Ghost or an FX Impact, they're quite high rifles anyway, and I find myself having to shim night vision products, Thermnites, Zulus, even the Micro Alpex as well, on those kinds of rifles, just as you say, to take out the MOA adjustment. So I'm really looking forward to getting these onto one of those and not having to cut up Coke cans and start making little shims like, I've got 3 or 4 here that you can see came off a Coke can the other day.
I know your second hobby is carving up Coke cans, isn't it?
I'm like an origami expert.
Yeah, I know. Whenever you pass a review kit on to me and I have a tinker with it, little pieces of aluminium are going all directions, and I'm then realising that I'm ruining your shimming for when I hand it back. I sheepishly stuff them back in there, but they probably come back the other way around, so I've completely unshimmed it for you.
Well, now we don't have to, which is great, which is a tremendous boon. It really is.
Yeah, no, it's good stuff. And like I say, Masood's always coming up with different ideas. And he was saying to me at the British Shooting Show that he is inventing literally all of the time, writing stuff down, making notes of things. And yeah, he's somebody that's fizzing with ideas, and you can see it in these products. They are amazing pieces of kit. And in fact, we've actually got a 15% discount code for, I think it's anything in the scope mount section on the EagleVisionCam.com website. So if you go and take a look at this kit, like I said, I think it is just in the scope mounting section. And I hope I've got this right. We will put it in the description, but I think it's Airgun Extra 15. So that's Airgun Extra, all one word, all lowercase, figure 15 for that 15% discount at EagleVisionCam.com. Right, well, I think that takes us on to our Q&A section. And that is brought to you in association with Anglia Tackle and Gun. Brilliant gun shop. As their name suggests, they also sell fishing kit. I will put a link to their website in the show description, and we also have a discount code for them. So, Rich, do you want to kick us off with the first question?
Yeah, and this is another good one. One that came in via email once again. Matt, do you think it's important to have access or to own a chronograph?
Yes. Yeah, I'll give you a slightly more comprehensive answer. But yes, I think particularly in this day and age when it is more important than ever to stay on the right side of the law. So if you're shooting sub 12, chopping and changing between different ammo can cause fluctuations in muzzle energy. Therefore, being able to measure muzzle velocity and calculate muzzle energy, that's arguably the most essential reason for having a chronograph, is for ensuring that your sub 12 foot-pound airgun stays sub 12 foot-pounds. We've touched on it before, tuning airguns. We don't do so much of it ourselves, but people that are mad keen on slug shooting, it's quite apparent that by and large, to get the best out of slug ammunition, you do have to tune your gun to run it exactly the way, the right velocity. And also, it seems not just the velocity, but the way that power is being delivered. But also, if you are tuning a gun, you want to keep an eye on the speeds that you're achieving, because you may be aiming for a specific speed. And also, you can measure consistency. So it's all very well tinkering with your FAC airgun and adjusting muzzle velocity, but if consistency falls out of the window during your tinkering, you've done more harm than good. So again, chronograph just enables you to ensure that everything's running as it ought to be in a consistent way, and also just for ammo testing in general. So regardless of the legalities of it, or trying to achieve target speeds, just keeping an eye on the fluctuations that ammo changes cause, whether that does have any influence on accuracy. So yeah, first and foremost, the legal side of it. But when you're getting into tuning and ammo testing, it makes it far more tangible, that the changes that you're causing by making adjustments to the setup. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's an essential piece of anyone's kit. And, the person who asked the question made a good point. It's about having access to one as opposed to owning one.
Yeah.
So, if your club has got one, then it's the sort of thing that you might only need once in a while. But definitely, the legal side of it, absolutely. And as you say, but it will also give you a heads up on problems. If you suddenly realise or think your rifle is starting to lose a bit of accuracy, then run it over the chronograph, and that will tell you if it's losing, if it's being inconsistent, which might or might not hint at a regulator problem, for example. I think the other thing on the legal side is that an awful lot of guns nowadays have power adjusters, and when you're potentially dialing up and dialing down hammer spring tension, that sort of number 10 on the scale might have a different value if you've been using number 4 on the scale for a while and go back to number 10.
Mm-hmm.
So, you might sort of chronograph your gun on power setting number 10 and be perfectly happy that's just under the legal limit, then go away and use it on power setting number 6 for whatever reason for a while, and then come back to 10 and find that all of a sudden it's not where you left it. So it's good to have a chronograph to check from that perspective. And also, rifles creep over time. They're mechanical things. Things change in them. So it's always I try as far as I can to chronograph all my rifles every 3 months, and I keep a little bit of a log just to so I can track how a rifle is performing over a period of time, and obviously to make sure they're still legal. But yeah, I'm with you. I think it's essential kit to have access to, not necessarily to own, but for the sake of not a lot of money, they're good things to own as well, I think,
and also quite affordable. I had the Nate Crony for review, so that's a muzzle mounted one. So we've had the review on the main show, and there's also a review on the website airgunextra.com. Now, I think the RRP for that was £140, which means if you shop around, you'll find it for significantly less. And another great thing, they're so easy to use these days. I can remember back in the day, even if you were getting good readings, they only told you muzzle velocity, which meant you then had to go away and do the sum, that complex sum that we all used to share in the magazines and books and things, to convert using the pellet's weight and the muzzle velocity to find the muzzle energy. Well, nowadays, obviously, more often than not, you've paired it with your phone, you put in the weight of your pellet, hey presto, it tells you muzzle energy based on the muzzle velocity reading that it gets. So getting far more affordable and very, very easy to use.
Yeah, it used to be when you had the 2 frames and you had to shoot through the frames. If it's too sunny, you wouldn't get a reading. If it wasn't sunny enough, you wouldn't get a reading. If the day had a Y in it, then before lunchtime, you wouldn't get a reading. The radar ones now are just so much easier to use.
Yeah, and something else that I really noticed with the muzzle-mounted one was that you're never getting any variation, because there's always potential for a little bit of variation between the distance between the muzzle and the chronograph, or even the angle, and it's bound to cause tiny fluctuations in the speed that it's reading. But when you've got it screwed onto the muzzle, that distance, the sensor is always in exactly the same place. So you're getting an absolutely consistent reading. So yeah, they've come a heck of a long way.
So I've got another great question here, Matt, and I'd be interested to know what you say about this, and I might take a few notes down. What is your advice for getting into the airgun media industry? I'm guessing as someone who's maybe done a few YouTube videos and is thinking this might be the next kind of thing for them. And any advice for that kind of person?
Be prepared to work hard. I mean, we've assuming that by the media they are talking about digital, which, let's face it, these days that's the way it's going. People don't expect to have to pay for content anymore. They like moving images. Myself included, we've all got quite lazy with reading. We like to just sit and look at social media and watch videos. So yeah, first of all, I would say be prepared to work damned hard, because it looks fun, and it is fun. But once you start committing to putting content out on a regular basis, like we had the great idea for a fortnightly main show, that sounds really straightforward. However, you factor in things that happen in life that you don't plan, factor in the weather, if you're making hunting videos, factor in wildlife. It's blinking hard work. And if you're doing it because you think you might get more trigger time, you're probably better off getting a normal job and working 9 to 5, because again, it's mostly desk work. We do a lot of shooting, but that is as well as the desk grind. I had to smash out a 60-hour week a couple of weeks ago so I could take 2 days off bank holiday week, including the bank holiday. So it's not the sweet number that it may appear on the outside when you just think, Matt and Rich just make a 10-minute video every fortnight. That main show, by the time everybody involved has done their bit, if that was one person doing everything, that's a week's work, easy.
Yeah.
So yeah, be prepared to do the grind, but it is a great industry to work in. Yeah, the airgunning community, great people. The airgun industry is full of great people. We've just caught up with Eric, who's a key figure in the airgun industry. We had Tony Belis on the last podcast. Brilliant people to work with. And when you do a good video, it's hugely fulfilling. When you see people enjoying the work you're putting out, it's hugely fulfilling. And I tell you what, this last year, I mean, I've been around a long time now. I think I've started in print. I think I've worked in the airgun media industry now for nearly 25 years, so nearly a quarter of a century. And I'm getting a lot of messages from people saying, I got into airgun shooting because of you, or I got back into airgun shooting because of you. And that is hugely fulfilling. So that does make all of the hard work worthwhile. I would say it's for young people these days, they're at a huge advantage, because if you're talking the digital side of things, they grew up with this tech. You know, they know it inside out. So that bit will be second nature. But I would say, you know, that they don't have to learn it like we do. It is worth getting a media qualification more for the legal side of publishing and broadcasting, because I think people forget you've still got copyright laws, you've got libel laws, they all exist even on social media. And I think we will see more and more people falling foul of that. So yeah, if you're looking at it from a professional, commercial point of view, do some kind of media course that at the very least gets you relatively savvy with media law. Be thick-skinned. Yeah, be thick-skinned. Yeah, because I've been talking about all of the super fulfilling, puff you up kind comments that you get. Thankfully, they are in the vast minority. Touch wood. But yeah, you will get a lot of. Look, I think if you put yourself out there, you are putting yourself out there, and we should be held to account. So if I do something wrong, say something stupid, get a fact wrong, whatever, that's what comments are for. We should be taken to task. We should be set straight. That's correct. But when you've got people bitching, and there is no other way to put it, taking sort of cheap personal shots at you because I don't know why. You've got to be thick-skinned about that. Thankfully, I couldn't give a monkeys, and I pity anybody that dislikes me enough to have a swipe at me on social media, but hates themselves enough to subject themselves to watching my content.
For free.
How does that make sense? And I also think I was sort of raised on the principle of you can't win an argument with an idiot. So I don't tend to lock horns too much, and I advise other people not to lock horns too much when you get idiot comments. Assuming that these comments are coming from grown adults, if you've got a grown adult that's got the time and inclination to take a personal swipe at somebody on social media, you know you're probably dealing with pond life anyway. So go back and do the job you love, have a laugh with your friends, enjoy your nice family life, and don't get embroiled in spiteful, petty, bitchy comments from presumably low self-esteem people. That's that. And another thing, again, I referred to the fact that we should and could be held to account when it's right. Now, I think you also do have to be mindful that if you're putting yourself out there, you are representing the whole airgun / shooting community. So we've had the cheek almost to make ourselves self-appointed representatives, and that means you do have to be very careful about how you present yourself, what you say, what you share in terms of what you get up to when you're not out with your gun, because that might be taken out of context and used against you / the sport. And it's another reason why it does irk me when we get these silly, spiteful swiping type comments, because it shows to the outside world and those that don't necessarily like or understand what we do, it shows kind of fractures in our community, which is why, again, I don't like to get too embroiled in it, because if we're scrapping and quarrelling and sniping at each other, what does that say to the outside world about our little community? So, yeah, be prepared to do the grind, get a media qualification, be prepared to have people take a swipe at you and just shrug it off because it means nothing, and enjoy it, because it is a brilliant, brilliant thing to do, and it's a gift. It's a privilege to be able to do it, and it is hugely fulfilling. And go for it, and don't let other people tell you how you should be creating content and what you should be doing, because you need to love it. And when it comes to your own content, you know better than anybody else. And if the way you want to do it doesn't work, then you're probably in the wrong job and do something else. But if you love it and you get it right, it'll take care of itself.
Yeah, and I think the thing to remember is that, and in a sense, the whole video side of things makes this easier, because at the end of the day, all you are doing is imparting an opinion, and my opinion is worth no more than anyone else's opinion. It's free. So I have no problem with people having a difference of opinion with me, because their opinion is as valid as mine. But once you step off of that kind of factual, discussion, then it can get very childish very quickly. And I think also, if you're starting out, then stick to what you know about in terms of content. Don't be tempted to go and write a story or do a video on how to succeed at HFT if you've never shot in an HFT competition at all, because your lack of knowledge will get exposed very quickly. So pick the things that you know about, that an aspect of the sport that you have an absolute passion for, and talk about that, because your passion and your knowledge will shine through. And the other thing is, don't assume that everyone out there has a super high level of knowledge and ability, because they don't. There's all kinds of ability out there, and I guarantee that at whatever level you are at, there will be people at the same level and not as advanced as you. So there'll always be a market for people based on your level of understanding and experience at that point in time. And then, honesty is the best policy. It really is. I mean, we often get accused about buttering up reviews and what have you. When you're doing a video review, what you see is what you get. And, and when I'm shooting a target at 30 meters, and the group I get is the group I get, and there's no buttering that up. There's, none of the guns come to us that have been super tuned by the manufacturers or fettled with by their gunsmiths. They're just the guns that you or I built, you or I can buy. So, as I said, video is a great way of demonstrating things how they actually are. And the written stuff, Matt, you, like me, you came up with the written word as opposed to the video word. And I would still say that although that kind of sector is shrinking as people's consumption of media changes, it's still a great discipline to have. And even if you are thinking about doing a video, in a sense, kind of almost write yourself out a script, write yourself a story that you're going to follow. Excuse me, because I think that will stand you in good stead, because at the end of the day, every single piece of content that we put together and most other YouTubers put together is basically telling a story. So if you can develop that sort of storytelling muscle, it will stand you in good stead.
I couldn't agree more, Rich. And I do think, yes, it's about being a good communicator. Probably the best way to start at being a good communicator is to have reasonably good written English. And you're dead right about planning things out. The amount of planning that we do now, we mentioned earlier that you don't know how the wildlife's going to behave, but every video we make, we go out with a good idea of the kind of structure that video is going to have. So when we turn up, we're going to talk about this. In the process of setting up, we're going to talk about that. There's a key item of kit associated with this kind of shooting, so I'll touch on that. And the actual results, that's the bit that's a bit less predictable. But you always go out with a really solid framework. And I'll tell you another piece of advice. If you work with other people, here's a good cheat. Surround yourself with greatness. Have a Rich Saunders and the other people, that are part of, help us with video editing, podcast editing, photography. If you work with other people, make sure that they share your values and your attention to detail, and the same. You have the same goals, and I think that counts for a huge deal, because then you're all pushed in the same direction. You all learn from each other, and you have good fun working together as well, which is another great privilege of this job, is the fact that we work with our mates, which is, you can't get better than that, can you? Right. It's not much of a lighter note, this one, actually. Is it worth going to the trouble of obtaining a firearm certificate so I can use a high-power airgun for hunting? What are the real advantages of having more power? Over to you, Rich.
I would be a hypocrite if I said no, because I've got 2 cabinets full of them. But there's a tendency to think that 100 foot-pounds means you can shoot things on the horizon. When there's loads of great videos of people who do that. I don't believe 99% of them. But for sure, FAC will get you a little bit more range. It will give you flatter trajectory. It'll be a little bit more wind resistant as well. Interestingly enough, and I was talking to Chris, our competition winner, about this. Within reason, if you look at the trajectory of a 12 foot-pound 177 pellet, it's not that different to a 22 30 foot-pound, or a 45 50 foot-pound 2.5, or even a 80 90 foot-pound 30 cal. They all have a trajectory. Obviously, and they're all at those levels, reasonably similar. The difference is obviously, heavier, bigger caliber pellets carry that much more momentum when they strike. I think for me, the real benefit of FAC is that, yes, I can get another sort of 10, 15 yards maybe on my range, but most of my shooting, 12 foot-pound or FAC, tends to be at the same kind of distances, to be honest, sort of anywhere between 20 and 40 meters. Now, I'll take a 177 12 foot-pound rifle out to 40 meters, with all the usual caveats about rested position and all the rest of it. Simply because I know you're talking about an inch of variation in terms of holdover. But most of my shots, even with my 30 foot-pound 2.2s, same kind of distances. Just so I know that I can pretty much aim on between 20 and 40 meters. They hit that much harder as well. My 30 caliber, yes, I can go a little bit further still, but only with the aid really of ballistic calculators, because at the end of the day, even an FAC rifle is still a pretty weak and underpowered thing. My 30 caliber is probably getting close to 2.2 LR in terms of foot-pounds, and 2.2 LR is the weakest rimfire that you can get. So I don't think that it's going to suddenly mean that you can shoot rabbits and pigeons on the horizon, despite what you've seen on the internet. What about you, Matt? Are you shooting as much with your FACs as ever?
It depends on the kind of shooting you want to do. If you do a hell of a lot of pest control and a lot of it over open ground, I would say FAC is potentially justified. I've got numerous FAC rated air guns. I love using them. I don't push, as you know, I don't push the power very high. Usually for me it's 30 to 40 foot-pounds. I like it to have that. So it's a 2.2 that shoots as flat as a sub 12 177. So it's still very much airgun hunting principles. A little bit more stopping power, behaves a little bit better in the wind. So for me, it's if I've got again with making videos, if the wind's pushing a bit and it's a suitable permission, I'll grab the FAC gun just because it's a bit more appropriate for those conditions. It irks me a little bit when people say, "Oh, I'm not watching this; it's all FAC." Well, I use my FAC rated airgun pretty much the same as most people would use a sub 12. Like I say, it's a little bit more sensible in the wind. Can't remember the last time I shot anything over maybe 45 meters with it. So I'm not really pushing the range that much. You've touched on this. The target doesn't get any bigger. Heart and lung shots are on more with FAC. But so, yes, if on certain permissions, I would shoot more with an FAC rated airgun than a sub 12. So if you can justify it, yes, it is worth the expense and the fuss. However, as I always say, if I could only have one airgun, it would be sub 12 foot-pounds, because the reason we choose airguns most of the time is because they're quiet, they're discreet, and they're safe to use in places where you can't use other guns. Very confined woodland, farmyard pest control. You wouldn't go ratting in relatively close proximity to farm vehicles, livestock, with anything other than a sub 12 foot-pound airgun. That's the beauty of it. And then when you think you can also do the rabbit shooting off a bipod, the corvid control, pigeon shooting, you can still do that with a sub 12 airgun. It is the most versatile of them all. So if I could only have one, that's the way I'd go. So yeah, so sorry it's not a clearer answer, but my summing up would be, if you've got the applications that justify it, it's worth it. But for versatility, you probably won't beat sub 12.
Yeah, and as you say, let's face it, if you're shooting rats and squirrels, you might only be shooting, certainly rats over 12, 15 meters. Squirrels maybe, off a feeder, maybe 20 meters. Yeah, that's what 12 foot-pound guns are used for. And an FAC, if anything, would be more of a hindrance in that situation. You know, and how dead do you want a squirrel to be at the end of the day? You know, a 12 foot-pound will kill a squirrel as much as a 30 foot-pound. But you would also then be able to use that 12 foot-pound gun to shoot rabbits out to 30, 35 meters, pigeons and corvids at the same distance as well. So, you know, 12 foot-pound covers all scenarios. An FAC gun doesn't. You know, I must admit, if I'm going out rabbit shooting and I know I've got plenty of land, then I'll take an FAC rifle with me. Same if I'm shooting pigeons or corvids. You know, depending on the land, you know, that would be my first choice. But when it comes to rats and squirrels, 12 foot-pounds all the time, all the time. Yeah, and also, you know, there is an investment to be made in terms of your responsibility to not only follow the law, but also to make sure that you take all kinds of sensible precautions beyond those covered by the law as well. So yeah, nice to have, but I wouldn't say, you know, it wouldn't. It's not having an FAC wouldn't have hindered my sport, I don't think, if I couldn't have got one.
No, and that's it. I'd say goodbye to FAC airguns before sub 12 airguns, because I wouldn't be able to do as much with an FAC rated airgun. Right, so moving on, and we'll try to be fairly swift with this one, because I see time's moving on a bit. And it is quite a straightforward one, actually. Do you still go night shooting in the summer? Yes, I just had to start later. You know, this time of year we're coming up to the longest day of the year pretty soon. You know, it's going to be won't be dark until well after 10 o'clock. But yeah, I mean, I still like my night shooting. It's nice that you have more kind of dusk shooting this time of year. But yeah, on my permissions at least, rabbits are still more active at night, certainly less cautious than they are during the day. And rats also, they come out when it's dark. I think they're just conditioned to do that. So yeah, absolutely, I will do
as much night shooting in the winter as I do in the summer. Just the hours are a little bit different. There's not as much time because it's not as dark for as long, and it takes longer to get dark. But yeah, absolutely, I still night shoot in the summer. Guessing the same's true for you, Matt, or are you going to surprise me?
Yeah. I can't bounce back from it as quickly as I used to, though. I must admit, I'm 49 in a couple of weeks, and the past few years, I've really started feeling it. If I'm out into the small hours and getting up for work, I used to be able to, without thinking twice, whether it was shooting or fishing, get up at 5 in the morning, 4:30 in the morning, no sweat, get out and do that, come back, have a normal evening, go to bed at normal time, bounce back again the next day. Same with nights, go out shooting late, didn't think twice about it. But now I must admit, I do feel it. So yes, I do, and I still enjoy it. I do enjoy it more in the winter because the hours are a little bit more civilized. I'll be honest. I really enjoy night shooting, and I do like the fact that sort of midwinter, you can be getting into it at about 4:30 at night in the evening, and you can have 6 or 7 hours shooting, and still hit the sack at a civilized time. Absolutely perfect.
Yep, totally agree. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. You know, and you're but a mere whippersnapper compared to me, and it doesn't get any easier. I tell you, it doesn't get any easier.
Well, that was a nice straightforward one. So that brings us to the end of the Q&A section, brought to you in association with Anglia Tackle and Gun. They're based in Norwich, but I will also put a link to their website in the description, and we also have a discount code for a 5% discount from their website. I think it's just Airgun Extra, all one word, all lowercase, but again, I will pop it up in the description so you can see it for sure. So as I said, that brings us to the end. Don't forget, obviously, we've got the regular YouTube show going out. We have occasional additional reviews going out on that channel too. We have got the airgunextra.com website, loads of free hunting articles, reviews, news, how-to pieces. I want to say thanks again to Eric at CrackShot. We mentioned the fact that they are based in Newton Abbot in Devon. Again, you can find their website. I'll put a link in the show description. They're also on Facebook and also on Instagram. So yeah, give them a follow. And while you're on Facebook, do also give us a follow on the Airgun Extra Facebook page. And finally, I'd like to thank you all for tuning in. And thanks, Rich. It's always good to catch up, mate.
Indeed.
Providing nationally recognised third-party accreditation through Lantra, the Airgun Proficiency Course, APC, sets the standard in UK airgun training.
The Great British Shooting Show, held on the 13th to the 15th of February 2026 at the NEC Birmingham. Book tickets online at shootingshow.co.uk.